How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today was Daf Chavdal, Daf 24 of Masechta Makos. Friends, yo friends. Today's the last daf of Masechta Makos. So today we're gonna complete Masechta Makos. It's a gewaltige daf. There's some famous stuff. Let us do it. We're gonna start on Daf Chav Gimel Amud Beis, 4 lines from the bottom at the two dots. Darash Reb Simloi Darshan Sheish Meis Vishlosh Esrei Mitzvahs Nemel Moshe. 613 mitzvahs were said to Moses. Shlosh Meis Vishishim V'chomesh Lavin Kiminyan Nemos Achama. 365 mitzvahs lo saseh, the same amount of days there are in the solar year. The Rivan says, Shebechol yom mazhirim olav shelo la'avor, that every day they are reminding him not to violate them. Umasayim v'arboim v'shmoine essay, and 248 mitzvahs essay connected ivarv shel adam, like the number of limbs that a person has. And the Rivan says, T'chol aver ve'aver omer lo essay mitzvah, that every one of the limbs says, do a mitzvah. Beautiful. Omer Rav Hamnuna Maikra, Rav Hamnuna says, where do we have a pasuk for this? Teira tzivalanu Moshe Meirasha, that Moses taught us Teira as an inheritance, and Teira begamatria shisme v'chad tzreave, and Torah is 611, because Moses, it says Torah tzivalanu Moshe, Moses taught us 611 mitzvahs. Anochi v'lo yiyeh mipi agvura shamaynu, but the remaining 2, right, by Har Sinai, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, and lo yiyeh lecha elem echem aponai, those were said by the Rabbeinu Shalom. So 611 and 2 is 613. Ba David ve'midon al achas esrei. David came and he boiled them down to 11 kilu. Well, what does the Rivan say? Shebatchila ayu tzadikim. Initially, the people were tzadikim, vayu chodin lekabel all mitzvahs, and they could handle all of the mitzvahs. Harbe. Aval doris achronim lo ayu tzadikim kolach. They weren't such righteous people. Vimbo lishmar kulon ein lecha adam shezoiche. It was too hard. God became too hard. All the 16. So, 613. So King David boiled them down to 11. And those 11 he compiled into the 16th kapitel of Tilim. Mizmar LeDavid, Hashem miyagabu alecha, God who will live in your tent, miyishkain b'hakochecha, who will dwell on your holy mountain. Here we go, 11 items. Hoylech tomim, ufoyel tzedek, v'dover emes bilvavo, lo ragal al lishono, lo asal re'eu ra'a, that's 5. V'cherpa lo inosa al kreve, nivza bein of nimos, v'zirei Hashem yichabed, nishba lo harav lo yomir, kaspa lo nosem beneshech, v'shoichar anoki lo lakach. 11. I say, eile, lo yimot lo olam, and anybody does these 11 items will not falter forever. Although we're going to see later on that maybe even somebody who does even one of these items will not falter forever. Holich Tomim, walking in completeness, or let's say that. Ze Avram, that's Abraham. Dichsiv esalich lefanei ve'yei somim, walk before me and be complete. Poyol tzedek, a righteous worker, going Abba Chilkiyahu, like Abba Chilkiyahu, who was very meticulous when it came to work, with his managing his time for his employer. Vidover emes bilvavo, and somebody who speaks truth in his heart. Kigon Rav Safra, like Rav Safra, that there's a Maisa, the Rivan quotes that Rav Safra, one time somebody wanted to buy epis from him, and he was reading Kriya Shema, so he didn't respond. So the guy figured that Rav Safra didn't respond because it wasn't enough money, so he increased the price. But then when Rav Safra finished reading Kriya Shema, he simply explained that he was busy reading Kriya Shema, that's why he didn't respond, but in his heart he had already agreed to the lower price, and therefore he's willing to sell it for the lower price. Lo rogal al lishoinoi ze Yankif Avinu, that he didn't like slander. That's Jacob. That when Rivka initially suggested to Yaakov that he kind of be a little sneaky with the blessings with Isaac, so initially Yaakov didn't want to do it because he says, well, it's not exactly so above board. He doesn't do bad stuff to his friends. He doesn't step on his friend's toes in business. He doesn't go into his friend's business. It's talking about somebody who brings his relatives close. Somebody who's despicable is despicable in his eyes too. This is like King Chizkiyahu, that he schlepped the bones of his father Achaz on a bed of reeds, because Achaz was a nudnik. And he honors those who fear God. That when Yehoshaphat, king of Judah, would see a Torah scholar, he would stand up, he'd give him a big hug and a kiss, and he would say, Rebbe, Rebbe, Mori, Mori. He swears to do bad, like I guess to himself kind of, and he doesn't, and he does it. Kilu, he doesn't trade it in. He doesn't not do it. Like Rabbi Yechanan, right? I remember you remember when when we learned this on Tanis stuff, Masechta Tanis stuff Yud Beis. Now Rabbi Yechanan, when he would go walk home from the Beis Hamedrash, he didn't want to get stopped by the Beit Nesiah, and they would invite him in, and he'd have to have lunch and socialize and talk to people. He didn't want that. So he would just say that he's fasting, and that way, he wouldn't have to go into the Suda because he's fasting. They're going to be, oh, you're fasting? Okay, no problem. Enjoy the rest of your day. And that way he would avoid it. And even though, for some reason, technically it wasn't a proper, like he didn't actually have to be Mekayim the fast, but once he said that he was fasting, he would stick to it and he wouldn't fast. If you remember, at the time that we learned that daf, so I was very excited. I thought I had a great excuse that if the next time somebody's trying to get me to go someplace, I'll say, "Oh, I'm fasting." And then, of course, my friend who I always try to avoid, he called me. He says, "Oh, well, he probably tried calling. I probably didn't pick up. Maybe he messaged me or something. I heard that. It was something along those lines." He said, "I heard that," and then the next time he invited me to his house, I said, I'm fasting. And I think he knew that I wasn't. Well, then I just had to resort to, I'll get back to you. Let's go weiter. Dam Rabbi Yechanan, betunis, ad she'avo lebeisi kasboi loy nosam beneshech. He doesn't give his money with interest. Afilu beribis ovid kichovim, even if it's the interest for an ovid kichovim. V'shoichad al, right? Because ribis of ovid kichovim is not a problem, but he doesn't even do that. V'shoichad al noki loy lokach. He doesn't take bribes. Kigon Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yosi, like Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yosi, that his sharecropper brought to him what was due to him, right? Meaning Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yosi had a sharecropper, and the sharecropper was bringing him the stuff that was his, meaning that belonged to Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yosi, but he brought it a day early, and on that day he had a case with Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yosi. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yosi says, I can't accept my own crops today because it would be like accepting a bribe. Ksiv osa eile lo yimot le'olam. And these people who do these things will never falter. When Rabbi Gamliel would reach this verse, he would cry. Omar, he said, Man avilu lichulu hu deloy yimot. So he says, well, I'm concluding from here that in order to not falter, you have to do all of these 11 things. But if all you do is one of them, you will falter. They said to him, Miksif Ose Kol Ele, doesn't say somebody who does all of these. It says somebody who does these things, even if you just do one of them, that is sufficient and you will not falter. If you don't say like this, we have another pasuk that says, by rice it says, don't become tummy with all of these things. What? You only become tummy if you do all of the arayas? No, even if you just do no, rather it's even if you just do one of the arayas, you're not doing good things. So here also we're talking about if you do one, right? Even if you do one of these things, you will not falter. But Yoshio came Yoshio and he boiled it down to 6. Tichsiv Holech Tzedakis V'Dover Meisharim Moyes Babetza Ma'ashakos Noyer Kapav Mitumach B'Shochad Otim Oznim Mishma Adamim V'Otim Edim Meros Bira Holech Tzedakis Avram Avinu. When it says that he walks in righteousness, that's Abraham. Tichsiv, the pasuk says, Ki Yadaitiv L'Manash Yitzave is one of his Beisa Achav V'Shamu Derecham Lasis Tzedako Umishpat. Okay, so that's Abraham. V'dov Meisharim V'dov Meisharim Zeh She'eino Maknit Pnei Chavero Barabim. That's somebody who does not embarrass his friend in public. Moiz Babetza Ma'ashokis, somebody who who's disgusted by extortion. He doesn't extort. You go on Rabbi Shema ben Elisha, like Rabbi Shema ben Elisha, who was a Kohen, and when they would bring him, I think it was the Kohen Gadol even, when they would bring him the truma to Yerushalayim, he would say, wait, I can't accept this because if you're bringing it here, who do you normally give it to? Because you're not, that means that you're denying him the truma. I don't want to accept that. No, your kap of mitmach beshochad, somebody who avoids bribes, could go to Bishma Bar Yossi, like we saw earlier, Bishma Bar Yossi who didn't accept from the sharecropper a day earlier because it would be considered like a bribe in that day's court case that Bishma Bar Yossi was a dayanan. Otim ozno mishmaya domim deloishama bezilusa detzorb merban v'shosik, that he does not hear the speaking badly about a Talmid Chacham and keeps quiet. He doesn't keep quiet when he hears bad speaking about a Talmid Chacham. Kagon Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon, that we learned about in Masechta Bava Metzia, that right when he died, he wasn't buried right away, and then there was a worm that came out of his ear, and he came to his wife in his dream because his wife was nervous that maybe he's starting to decompose. And he says, no, I'm not decomposing. He said to his wife in the dream, I'm not decomposing. Just one time I heard somebody speak negatively about Talmid Chacham and I didn't say anything. Somebody who holds back his eye, closes his eyes from seeing bad. That is somebody who does not look at the women when they are doing laundry in the river, I guess. Who miromim yishkoin ve'gomer, and he's going to have a good life. He's going to dwell on high. But Micha v'amidan al shalish. Micha came and boiled it down to 3. The Chesiv says, Higid l'cha ava adam ma toiv u'ma Hashem darish mimcha kim asis mishpat ve'ahavas chesed v'atznei leches im kecha asis mishpat ze adin. Doing judgment is din, judgment. Ahavas chesed ze gmilus chsadim v'atznei leches ze yitzas hametz v'achnosas kala. That's burying the dead and bringing achnosas kala, marrying off brides. And so kavachomer ma dvarim she'ein darkun la'asosim betzina amar terev v'atznei leches, right? That things that you don't normally do in sort of a quiet way. For example, funerals and weddings. Those are public kind of things, and still says v'atznei leches. Do it in a not modest way. Do it in a modest way. Tvarim she'darkun la'asosim betzina alachas kamo v'chamo. Certainly, then things that you do in kind of modest, humble ways, you shall do that. You should do them in modest, humble ways. Chazu Yeshayahu, after earlier boiling them down to 6, then boiled them down to 2. Shenemar koy omer Hashem shimu mishpat va'asu tzedakah. Guard judgment and do righteousness. Ba'amos v'amidan al achas, came Amos and he boil it down to one. Shnemer Kayomer Hashem Leves Yisrael Dirshuni V'chyu. Seek me and live. Maskefler Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Emed Dirshuni B'chol HaTorah Kula. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, wait, but Dirshuni, seek me, could mean seek me by doing all 613 mitzvahs. So Ela B'Chabakuk V'Amidon Al Achas Shenemer V'Tzadik B'Emunosoi Yichya, that a righteous person lives with his belief, with his emunah in the Rabbani Shalom. Amar Reb Yossi Rab Chanina Arba Gezeres Gozer Moshe Rabbeinu Al Yisrael, that Moshe Rabbeinu made 4 decrees on the Yidden Bo, Arba Neviim Uvitlum, and 4 prophets came and nullified those decrees. Moshe Amar said, Moshe Vayishkin Yisrael Betach Bodor Ein Yankiv, that Israel, this one's a little bit tricky. I think what it means is that Israel is going to live with like security, but only if they are like awesome like Jacob. But that's hard to do. But Amos Vidla Shenemar, but Amos was mavatal that, as it says, Chadal no miyakum Yaakov v'gomer. No, cancel that, because how would we be able to, stand like that? It's too much. Uchsiv nicham Hashem al zos v'gomer. It says that God canceled it. He waived it. Moshe Amar said, Moses, Uvagoyim ahem lo sargia, that you won't be able to relax among the nations. But Yirmiyah Amar, but Yirmiyah came halach largioi Yisrael, that relax. Moshe Amar says, Moses poiked oven ovis albonim, that God exacts the sins of fathers on sons. But Yechezkel uvitla hanefesh achotas he tamus, that Ezekiel says that the soul that sins is the one to die. Moshe, only the one who sins. Moshe Omar says, Moses, Vavatim bagoyim, you're going to be lost among the nations. By Yoshio, Omar says, Yoshio, V'hoyo bayoyim ha'u, it'll be on that day, Yitoka, B'shoifar Gadol v'gomer, that no, the Yidden won't be lost among the nations. Rather, on that day, when the Messiah comes, there will be you talk about shofar gadol. They will blow on a great ram's horn, and uvala oivdim beretz asher vanidochim beretz mitzrayim v'ishtachvu laHashem bar kodesh b'Yerushalayim. Cheve, my friend, if you let's try it right now. I think if you I'm going to try this right now. If you go to Google and you type in English, shofar, shofar, and you go to images. Let's see. It used to be true. Is that my friend? Oh, my friend used to be like the first one there. Oh. Alright. Maybe not anymore. Maybe there's more. Maybe it's a very competitive keyword. Alright, forget it. A few months ago, I searched for shofar, and is that my friend? No, I don't think so. All right. A few months ago, I searched for shofar, and the first entry was my friend. But maybe since then, there's been some other people took photos with shofars. All right, let's go right there. Okay, where were we? Amar Rav says, Rav mistafina mehai krop. I was always very fearful of this verse, Vavadtim bagorim, that we're going to be lost among the nations. Maskeflar Papa asked, Dilma kavedam is bakashas, but maybe it's maybe it means lost, but like lost and found, like a lost item that is going to be seeked after. I'm lost, like a lost sheep. Search for me, seek me. Let me say for the quote, rather from the end of the verse, that the land of your enemies is going to consume you. But it says Marzutra, but maybe it's like the eating, the consuming of squashes and gourds and things, where not the whole thing gets consumed, but parts are left over, so it won't be completely destroyed. There will still be Yidden left. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Yoshua, and Rabbi Akiva were on a shpatzir. V'shamu kol amoyne sharami miplota berichuk 110 mil. and they heard the crowds, the swarms in Rome at a distance of 120 mil away. And they started to cry. Rabbi Kiva Mesachik. Rabbi Kiva, however, was not crying. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Yoshua, they were crying. Rabbi Kiva was laughing. They said, Rabbi Kiva, why are you laughing? He says to them, well, why are you crying? They said to him, it's obvious why we're crying. These nations who bow down to idols and do all sorts of terrible things are dwelling with security and tranquility and quiet, while we serve ba'esh. But the house of the footstool of our God is burnt in fire. We won't cry. It should be obvious why we're crying. Rabbi Kiva says that's punkt why I'm laughing. That if for the people who violate God's will, they have such tranquility and such goodness, well then for those who do God's will, you can only imagine what's in store for them. Another time, they were going to Jerusalem. Now remember, this was right after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, right? Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Gamliel's father was Shimon Gamliel. His father was Gamliel. His father was Shimon. He was the great grandson of Hillel, right? Rabbi Gamliel's father. Rabbi Gamliel's father was already in the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Gamliel himself was also in the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Yoshua lived during the Beis Hamikdash. I think Rabbi Gamliel must have also lived during the time of the Beis Hamikdash. Right? So one time they were going to Yerushalayim, just after Jerusalem was destroyed. They get to Eretz Seifim where they could see Jerusalem. Karu bigdeim. They tore their clothing. And when they arrived at the Temple Mount, and they saw a fox exit from the Holy of Holies. They began to cry. Rabbi Kiva was laughing. They said to Rabbi Kiva, why are you laughing? He says, why are you crying? They said, what do you mean, why are we crying? Is it not obvious? A place about which it says that anybody who gets close will die. And now, foxes are just spaziering around in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. We won't cry. And Rabbi Akiva says that's punkt why I'm laughing. That it says in Yeshaya that get for me, I will appoint as witnesses Uriah Cain and Zechariah ben Yevarechiyahu. Michima inyan Uriah etzel Zechariah. What does Uriah have to do with Zechariah? Uriah b'mikdash rishon, Zechariah b'mikdash sheni. After all, Uriah was in the first temple, Zechariah was in the second temple. Elo tolakosov nivosel shel Zechariah v'nivosel shel Uriah. The pasuk makes the prophecy of Zechariah dependent on the prophecy of Uriah. But Uriah, it says by Uriah Yochid beglalchem siun sada techaresh v'gomer, that because of your iniquities, Zion will be a plowed over field, will be plowed over, will be destroyed. B'zchayik, if it says by Zechariah, Od yeshvu zkenim v'zkenes be'choves Yerushalayim, that elderly men and women will be sitting in the streets of Jerusalem. Od yeshvu, once again, they will return once again. The Yidden will be in Yerushalayim. Ad shelo niskayim nevuaso shel Uriah, so long as the prophecy of Uriah did not come to be, that Jerusalem would be plowed over. I was concerned that maybe the prophecy of Zechariah would never come to be. But now that I see that the prophecy of Uriah has come to be, well, biyadua, it is known then that the other side of the coin, is also going to come to be. That the prophecy of Zechariah is also going to be fulfilled. That men and women will be enjoying themselves in the streets of Jerusalem once again. And they said to Rabbi Akiva, Akiva nicham tonu, Akiva nicham tonu. Akiva, you have consoled us. Akiva, you have consoled us. Hadron olach eluhein halokin v'slikala masechta Makos. What an amazing Maisa there at the end. Akiva nicham tonu. Akiva nicham tonu. That was the Chav Dal of Masechta Makos. And with that, we complete Masechta Makos. A very, very short, concise, but also some great sugyas. There's some important sugyas there in Masechta Makos. I hope you enjoy Masechta Makos. Tomorrow we're beginning Masechta Shavuos. That Masechta is 49 dafs. Also not a very, we don't have so many big Masechta. We have a bunch of smaller kind of Masechtas coming up. No, we don't have any 100 pagers until we get to Zvachim. So Shavuos is 49 dafs. And then we have, I think Avodah Zarah is after that also. I think somewhere in the 70s or something. Anyways, I'll see you tomorrow for Masechta Shavuos. Peace out.